I had always been very, very interested in the Holocaust since I was about 15. And I'd really read widely on the subject. It was just kind of like my pet subject in a way as a reader. It was something I would go back to in terms of nonfiction works and biographies, and always trying to understand it better, to try to understand it, to try to figure it out. And generally, I mean, we can't, but we read in order to understand it. And I think all of that reading came together to the idea that I originally had, which was just the two boys at the fence. And when I started writing it, it wasn't that I thought to myself, I'd never thought about writing for young people. And I was 3 or 4 chapters in when it sort of occurred to me that because I'm writing about a 9-year-old boy, that maybe this is a book for young readers. And I knew it was going to be a short book as well. And as soon as I thought that, it seemed, I just thought, well, that's fine, and it didn't seem important in a way that, the audience that I was writing for. I just wanted to write the story. But when I finished it, I did give it to my agent with the words "a children's book" on the front. So I was very clear in my head that I was writing a book for young people, even though I'd never planned on it. I was surprised in a way that it then broadened out the way that it did, and that it became something for adults as well as young people. But you mentioned earlier that children's books, young people's books have changed in many ways. And, the lines between the two are much blurrier. I mean, the books that I call my adult books, I think, can be read by, intelligent teenagers. And the books that I call my young adult books can be read and are read by adults. So it's really more now about sort of who the central character is. If the central character is an adult, I call it an adult book. If it's the central character is a kid, I call it a kid's book. But Striped Pajamas just came from all of those years of reading and researching and learning about the Holocaust. The central friendship between Bruno and Shmuel, the Jewish boy. And I think people who read the book really cared about them and cared about the journey they went on, and are shocked by the ending that happens. And the other thing, I think, is Bruno's naivety. He's a 9-year-old boy in Poland in the early 1940s. He's at a concentration camp, but he doesn't understand what it is. He doesn't have the knowledge that you or I have. He's literally looking at that fence every day, asking what's going on the other side of that. And I always saw that as sort of a metaphorical idea, that that's what we do when we read about the Holocaust or we study it. We are going to a fence and looking across and asking, what's going on over there and why? Why did this happen? So I think people just cared. He's kind of like, all the kids in my books tend to be quite good-hearted, innocent, naive, polite, good readers, and endearing to the reader. And then when something bad happens to them, as it does in this book, I think the reader then feels quite distraught at the end of it. And I was quite deliberate that there's only like 3 pages after the big climactic scene at the end, because I wanted the reader then to basically have to put the book down and go, well, that's it, it's over. Which is, comes as a big surprise to people. 3 or 4 years where everything in my life was Boyne the Striped Pajamas. I was traveling for the first time all over the world, doing festivals. The book was just selling millions and millions. And I was suddenly gone from being kind of like a little known Irish writer to being kind of a literary celebrity and being invited everywhere. And the movie was just really in some ways part of that, but an exciting part of that. And yeah, I was on set. We shot it in Budapest. And I went over a few times and watched it being made, and that was exciting. And I got on very well with the director and the producers, and still friendly with them to this day. I think they did a really, really good job. I subsequently dedicated one of my novels to the 3 of them. So I have friends who went through negative experiences, but mine was very positive. I remember when we did the movie tour in the States and in Europe, we would go, myself and the director and some of the actors, and we would show up at the cinema that was showing the thing, 10 minutes before the end, before doing the Q&A. And you could always sort of tell when people hadn't read the book, how many people hadn't, because when the ending would come and the film would end, everybody would be like, what, heck, what, why aren't they saved? This is not a Hollywood movie. This is, how can you have such a dark ending? And, but it's a truthful ending, it's an honest one.